Hi, it's Martin again. And this is my second installment of Wisdom for My Children. Some little videos I'm making to pass along what I've learned over the years as a Christian. Last time we talked about the Bible, how important it is, and that we know it and use it to understand how to live the Christian life. And I ended with the idea that we need to rightly divide the Bible, that the whole Bible is written for us, but not necessarily to us. So we're going to look into that a little bit more, what I mean by that today. And related to that is, you may have heard a lot of people say, you can make the Bible say anything you want. And I have to agree, and I think the reason that happens is because people don't rightly divide the Bible. And so we'll talk about that as well today. So starting with the Apostle Paul, in 2 Timothy 2:15, he says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." And then in the next chapter, 2 Timothy 3:16, he says, "All Scripture is given by God, or is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness." So that's both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Both are profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, and instruction in righteousness. But not every single verse is a command to us Christians in the 21st century, and we need to understand how to rightly divide which is which. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit with some examples. So, for example, in Levitcus, which is in the Pentateuch in the Old Testament, chapter 5, verses 5 to 6, we read, "And it shall be, when he shall be guilty in one of these things, that he shall confess that he hath sinned in that thing, and he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord for his sin which he hath sinned, a female from the flock, a lamb or kid of the goats for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him concerning his sin." So, is that a command for the Christian today? I think it's pretty obvious. That's an easy one, right? That was the law of Moses. That was for the children of Israel. And it's not for the Christian today. We don't have to struggle with that verse, right? Because it's the law of Moses for the children of Israel, and even if it wasn't just for them, there's no priesthood, there's no tabernacle, there's no temple to offer sacrifices of a lamb or a kid of the goats, right? Okay, so that's easy. Old Testament, right? How about the book of Proverbs? And Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, we read, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Trick question? It's Old Testament. Well, I think that is a command from the Lord for us Christians today. Of course we're supposed to trust in the Lord. And so it's a little more complicated, rightly dividing the word, to just say Old Testament is for them, New Testament's for us, right? I think that's pretty easy to see. There's a lot of verses in the Psalms that are obviously commands for us today, and things that we should treat as instruction for us. What about the idea that, okay, so maybe there's some verses in the New Testament that are for us, some that are not. What about the New Testament? Is every verse in the New Testament an instruction or a command for the Christian? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's turn to the Gospel of Matthew. Chapter 8, verses 2 to 4, we read, "And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand, touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus saith unto him, See, thou tellest no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. So Jesus said that. New Testament. Is that a command from the Lord for us today as Christians? Well, again, that one's actually a pretty easy one. How can we show ourselves to a priest of the Old Testament, according to the law of Moses? So he was speaking to an Israelite, and in the book of Matthew, and telling him to follow the law of Moses. So obviously, everything in the book of Matthew is for us, but not necessarily to us. What about another example in Matthew? Let's see, in Matthew 23, let's see, what's our time? 6, okay. In Matthew 23, verses 1 to 3, we read, Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, Christians, right? Saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All, therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. So, Jesus, speaking to his disciples, Christians, we're talking like Peter and so forth, telling them to do what the Pharisees who sit in the seat of Moses say to do. And the Pharisees were saying, follow the law of Moses. So is that a command for us, since we're Christians too, just like the disciples? Well, that's kind of, I don't think so. Doesn't seem right. But it's Jesus. He's speaking to his disciples. He's telling them to do what the Pharisees said to do. So you can see that rightly dividing the word is very important. We need to know, is that a command for us or not? Let's see. How about the parables of Jesus? There are parables. There's been many books written, a lot of ink spilled, to try to explain the parables of Jesus and who are the different characters. So one that's has people teaching all different kinds of things about it is the parable of the 10 virgins. So let's just, that's kind of a long one, but briefly, now I'll go ahead and read it. Then, it's in Matthew 25, 1 to 13. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps, took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. When the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all the virgins arose, trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said unto the wise, Give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, No, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to the sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went out to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that went were ready, went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man cometh. So many teachers will say that the virgins are church members, with the wise ones being true Christians and the foolish being false Christians. Elsewhere in the Bible, we understand that the church is the bride of Christ. And that someday there will be a wedding and a marriage, such as in Revelation 19. So is the church both the bride and the wedding guest at the same time? If the virgins are indeed the bride and not the guests, isn't it odd that there are 10 of them hoping to get married? And that 5 actually do get married because they're the wise ones? So Jesus married 5 different, virgins? So that doesn't seem that cut and dry to me either. That it is the church that's the virgins. I think a simpler explanation is that the virgins aren't the church or the bride at all, and that Jesus is telling this parable for somebody else and not necessarily the church. So this is where rightly dividing the word of truth comes in. Very important. We need to know what verses are for us as Christians and what verses are for other groups in the Bible. And my time is running up. Peace. Oh, it's still going. I thought this thing automatically cut off at 10 minutes. Well, anyways, that's probably good enough for now. I'm going to pick it up on another segment, part 3, where we'll talk more about the Gospels and the book of Acts, and how do we rightly divide? What's really going to help us get to the bottom of all this? Talk to you next time.